All right. Hey, Pyros. Welcome back to BoomCast, the Pyro chat with Spirit of 76. I'm your host, Sam, with 76 Pro Line. Today, we're joined by special guest Dan Haines with Astro Magic Effects. And today, we are going to start out our Pyromusical Master Series. We wanted to kind of refresh some content that we've made in the past, and this one is going to be about basic show design and show choreography, especially with 1.4 fireworks. You know, we love our 1.4 consumer and pro use. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me.
Let's get into it. All right, so our overview today, we're going to be talking, this is pretty basic too for those just starting out, but you know, if you've been doing shows, you might learn a thing or two from this presentation as well. We're talking about display size and budget and considerations there, general music selection, audio editing tools that are available, choreography tools, and products and product information and categories and considerations for each of those. But first, we got to introduce our special guest, Dan. You've been in the pyro industry for since forever, 2005. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I got started in the industry working for a 1-3 company back in 2005, and I did that off and on for many years, kind of seasonally, doing shows and things like that, and also working in the office and managing displays. In 2015, I got hired on at Spirit of 76, and I was the 76 Pro Line manager from 2015 to 2022. And then in 2022, I went independent and started my own company, Astro Magic FX, which is primarily a display company that does shows, and we use a lot of the 76 Pro Line products, doing a lot of 1-4 shows and things like that.
Yeah, Astro does some amazing shows and in and around Missouri and pretty much like anywhere these days. Dan goes everywhere. It kind of feels like he never left. He's a familiar face at 76, done a lot of shows for us, with us, and does set up on our behalf on a lot of different events. Glad to have you in this chat, Dan. Let's talk about some recent displays you've done and kind of like the size and budget of each one. So we tried to get some examples of recent displays that Astro/Spirit has done. So here our small show example is a 2024 Mizzou Homecoming show that Dan did at the Country Club of Missouri golf course. And then our large show example is the 2024 Grand Public display for the PGI convention at the Brainerd, Minnesota Raceway. Let's start with the Mizzou Homecoming show. Even though our small show tends to be a little bit bigger than the average backyard show, it's still pretty short in duration and small in launch positions.
So the Mizzou Homecoming show is, I would call this a small scripted display. It was maybe around 5 or 6 minutes, but it was all like tightly choreographed using all 76 Pro Line products. There was a pretty modest budget. I think the product cost was like $2.5K in fireworks. So we did also accent the show with some other special effects. So we had LED lighting effects, and we also had flame effects in the show, just to add a little bit of extra dynamics beyond the fireworks. Product-wise and cue count-wise, it was a relatively small show with less than 300 devices, pyro devices.
And one of those unique venues too, the golf course. It's kind of nice that they let us shoot fireworks out there. And then this summer at PGI in Brainerd, Minnesota, the International Raceway, one of the biggest shows of the year that we've done, the Grand Public display, in addition with drones from Verge Aero. This show was massive. I couldn't even estimate the product cost. I was like, it's just a lot. This is not the size show that you would ever really do in your backyard, but it got a lot of really cool design and choreography elements. So we wanted to include it. About 19 minutes, at least 1,600 devices, and at least 75 pyro positions in there. If you had to quantify the product cost on that one, Dan, what were you thinking?
Probably in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $30,000, I would say, product cost, which is quite a lot. Yeah.
Mine, we imported a lot of that stuff from straight from Italy too. There was like 1-3 in that show.
All the shells were Italian-made shells from the Giuliani factory, and so that's not something that is readily available that you can get easily. They were all made special and custom. Yeah, it was quite a lot, and then quite a lot of 1/4 Pro line also as well. If you think
Uh,
about it in terms
they're
of
on the
a display, the product cost is only a small part of the expense and the show size. Like if you were selling that show, that would probably be like $100,000 show at least. Especially when you count the drones in there, that would be well beyond probably $100,000 fireworks show with, I don't know. I didn't even know what the drone show would cost.
So, I mean, I think what we're putting these up on the screen for is like to show like you can go huge and you don't have to go huge. Even 2000 you can get by with less than that in product costs, especially if you're supplementing with additional effects and lighting. This is just kind of like the scope of some of the recent displays that we've done or that Dan has done this year.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about layout and perspective.
Sure. So when you're looking at doing fireworks with 1/4 fireworks, one of the biggest things to consider is the site layout and kind of the perspective of how you're viewing the fireworks. And so this graph, I think, is a good illustration. It shows that, say you have some 1/4 fireworks that you're putting at 300 feet. Well, if you can put the fireworks at 300 feet, and then relative to fireworks that are put very far back, 600 feet, say 6-inch shells or something, you can still have a very similar perspective, which is just to say small fireworks look big when you put them up close, So you can, even if you're using 1/4 fireworks, you can still get a really big impact by getting them at the right distance. Now, of course, you always have to consider safety and site layout, and every site is a little bit different. Some sites you might not be able to put your fireworks 300 feet away. You might have to put them farther. But if you can get them in that zone, that's sort of I would say 300 feet for consumer or 1/4 fireworks is a pretty good distance to have a good perspective.
Yeah, that's a sweet spot. And then of course you can get like proximate or ground items a little bit closer than that to add an additional layer.
Certainly, yeah.
Here's another slide just kind of showing the different perspective of how it looks whenever you're up close and far away.
Yeah, this photo, this is showing the same fireworks, just 300 feet and 600 feet. So if you put the same fireworks 300 feet, it's going to fill your vision much better. It's going to give you a better show versus having to put them back at 600 feet.
And these are all 1/4 that we're seeing simulated here, right? This
I
is
think
all
that's like roughly like a wacky tobacco size, like a NOAB size shell, 300 feet away.
Okay. This is your site map from the Mizzou homecoming show at Country Club of Missouri.
So the one interesting thing about this show, the 1/4 fireworks, you can see there's 2 black lines across there. They're actually split up by caliber. So anything 2.5-inch diameter, that's like the diameter of the tube in the cake or the single shot. Anything 1.5-inch diameter breaking or 2-inch non-breaking is sort of a little bit closer. And then anything that's larger than that, so like 2-inch breaking items, are further away. A lot of people, when they're doing fireworks shows, might consider all 1/4 fireworks to be the same, but I actually consider them different based on their caliber and their performance and what they do, especially if you're doing an all 1/4 show. Like you might want to put the comets and mines a little bit closer. They're non-breaking. Maybe they're safer to put a little bit closer. You might want to put the larger breaking items, like 2-inch breaking items, 2.5-inch breaking items. You might want to put those further back. That's just kind of one of the nuances, I guess, of doing 1/4 shows that some people might not think about normally.
Exactly. We're going to talk a little bit more about those calibers too when we get to the products. And then you did have some special effects in the foreground here, which was pretty cool because you can get that stuff super close to the audience. It looks really neat. Non-breaking, obviously, is some small stuff plus the lighting that looked pretty sweet. Jump ahead to the PGI one. This was a massive layout. This was a really difficult site plan to work with, as I remember. 75 pyro positions.
Yes, it was quite difficult. I distinctly remember spending at least half a day trying to flag out all of the positions. It's particularly hard when you're putting flags out and there's already like 10 shows worth of old flags in the field. But we got it done. One of the things in this show that you'll notice is towards the front, closer to the spectators, there's quite a lot of positions, and those are all those frontage type items, flame pots, gerbs, strobes, things like that. And one of the reason we had a lot of positions is because we happen to be using that stuff on a Cobra firing system. One of the advantages to using a wireless system is you can put things all over. You can make a lot of positions and it's not much extra work or trouble because you don't have to run the cables. So that was one of the strategies in this show, was to use a lot of positions that were wireless and easy to put out.
Let's talk about music. Dan, what do you think makes some good pyromusical music?
Generally, 1/4 fireworks are faster and more exciting, and so generally music that's more upbeat and has a faster tempo works well with 1/4 fireworks. Not to say you can't have some slower songs and things like that. It's just you're a little bit more limited when you start doing slower songs, I feel like, in the 1/4. So pop music, rock music tend to lend really well to 1/4 shows, which is great because that's a lot of the music that people like to listen to.
You see a lot of the 1/3 shows using like classical or slower tempos because they take a lot of that product takes a long time to get up into the air and break, and it hangs for a long time, which you can sometimes get with some of the 1/4 stuff, like the Nishiki Kimuros or any big, relatively larger breaking ones, but it's usually more upbeat, especially when you're doing single shots and smaller cakes. To your point, music with dynamics, you need some highs and lows in there, right, to keep people's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. If your track is running at 100 miles an hour from start to finish, it's going to wear people out. So even if you want to have a fast, upbeat, music track, it's really good to mix in some slower stuff here and there just to bring the tempo down and give them that variance in the show. It'll make them appreciate the exciting sections much more if you can have some slower sections in there too.
Yeah, Pyromusical is basically a concert in the sky, so treat it like that. And then it's really fun to do themed soundtracks or anything that allows your music to flow from one to the other, even if it's specific to the venues or the event or the location where you're shooting. I've seen Dan do some amazing things, whether it's like a city or a sporting event, like the Mizzou homecoming show. Obviously, that was all Mizzou themed. You did a show with Spirit a few years ago in Kansas City. That was all Kansas City themed there. There's so much out there with pop culture that you can pick from, soundtracks from movies, games, TV shows, anything like that that is recognizable. People are going to love that. And they also make for really, really good dynamic pyro musicals. Remember the Greatest Showman soundtrack that you did for PGI Winter Blast several years ago was phenomenal. It's like one of the best shows that I'd ever seen. The soundtrack was just perfect for fireworks. So finding those kinds of things, it can be a challenge too. There's always copyright laws. So you got to be careful with that. I mean, if you're going to be just shooting it for your friends and family in your backyard, people don't really care. But if you're recording it and you want to put it up on YouTube or something, you do have to consider that. If you're considering uploading your show to YouTube, what I sometimes do to check on copyright is do like a dry run of your music, export some random video file that has all your music in it and upload it to YouTube to kind of like unlist it and give it several hours to do the checks and see if it's going to be copyrighted, if it's going to adjust, if it's going to be muted in certain locations, just to give a feel for if you wanted to publish your show, if you have the right music to do so.
The only thing I would add is just that when it comes to the theme and all of that, like the underlying motivation for doing that or trying to tell the story or whatnot is just to elicit an emotional reaction from your crowd. And so when it's patriotic or whether it's Christmas or whether it's space themed or whatever it is, I think playing to your crowd and that's like the hallmark of a really good show is when you can just get people to feel it in the gut emotionally.
100%. Yeah, no, I completely agree. If you get your audience to feel a certain way, they're going to fall in love with your show. All right, so let's chat a little bit about audio editing tools. We've got two recommendations. If you're trying to save money, there are always free options out there. One of the ones that we've used before is Audacity. I personally really have come accustomed to Adobe software, Adobe Audition. If you're trying to just quickly cut together music and fade some quick clips together for music, Audacity is great for it. But if you're trying to get a little bit more sophisticated with it, we really like Audition, I think.
Yeah, Sam and I are both kind of Adobe Suite users. I used Audacity very early on to do some basic edits, maybe like add some time code to a track or something like that. And I found it easy to work with. Big advantage, obviously, is it's free, it doesn't cost anything. You just get in, download the software. It's open source, I believe. So if you're just getting into it, Audacity is great for that. But I think definitely either Adobe Audition or some sort of more professional audio mixing, editing tool will save you a lot of headache and heartache. Learning that software is sort of an investment in, time and in your skill sets. So there is a bigger learning curve to learn an Adobe program like Audition or any of the Adobe Suite products, but the more you use it, the faster you get with it, you spend some time with it, then that's like a really valuable tool you can have in your toolkit to mix music.
For sure. It's really easy to get overwhelmed whenever you kind of look at an Adobe software and see like all these options when all you want to do is cut together like 3 songs. You can find an online tutorial and that'll walk you through it if you're just starting out. And then you'll find that like, oh, this is actually pretty easy. You can export it and then maybe you get more sophisticated later on with adding cool effects into it. Okay, let's move on to talk about a little bit about choreography tools. Dan, when you were first starting out, I bet that you did not go right into scripting with Finale 3D. How did you go through the process of scripting your fireworks to music?
Yeah, when I started, Finale 3D didn't exist. I don't think Finale existed at all. The way we scripted shows originally was with this college ruled notebook paper. So, college ruled notebook paper has 30 lines on each page, and you would number each line with a second, and each page would be 30 seconds. And you would just map out on a notebook what you wanted to shoot when based on the time, and it'd go from notebook into probably Excel or some sort of a Fire file. And then from that Fire file, we would generate anything we needed as far as labels, or we use what's called cue cards and device numbers, a lot of things that aren't even really used anymore today. But the point is mainly that you can script a fireworks show without a lot of aids as far as software. You can do it on a piece of paper, you can do it on an Excel sheet.
Yeah, you don't even technically need to touch a computer. It does help, especially with spreadsheets, if you're looking at all the product and then gathering your totals and things, but you don't really need to, especially if you know what you've got. There are other options now. Also, there's definitely a few free tools out there as well as more premium tools that you can pay for. A few that we've highlighted here are like without the simulation, there's the Ignite Show Designer. That's if you use the Ignite firing systems, this is a really awesome tool. And even if you don't use the Ignite firing systems, you can still use it. It is a free tool that is available on a browser. You can just pull in your effects and line it up according to when you want those items to go off. Cobra Show Creator is similar, but it's definitely geared towards Cobra firing system users. You're able to export your show files there and load them into your Cobra system and get all the information there you need. Definitely worth an investment if you're going to be using it with Cobra. And then if you are someone like me who's very visual, likes to use simulation and see how your layering looks, there are simulation tools. The free one that we're pointing out is available on the 76 Fireworks website, also available on 76 Proline website. It's the 76 Fireworks Show Builder. Really, really awesome tool. It's still kind of in beta mode. We're still making improvements to it, but it does have quite a few consumer fireworks on there and a few Proline cakes on there as well. It's mostly cakes at this point. We're working on adding some single shots in there, but that's a really good way if you're making a really quick and easy display with consumer fireworks. You can plug them in there. It's a free tool and you can see kind of how it's going to look, move them around up to 3 positions, and you can simulate it look at it from any angle. Pretty cool for a free tool. And then there's Finale 3D.
I would say Finale 3D is probably the best software for designing fireworks shows today. I think Finale 3D is sort of the industry leader. If you're doing a show with a lot of cues or a very complicated number of positions, there's a lot of tools that as your show becomes more complicated and complex, a tool like Finale 3D is going to help you execute that show much more seamlessly that other tools aren't maybe going to be able to do. So it depends on the complexity of your show, what tools right for you. If you're doing a basic show, if you're doing a backyard show, some of these other tools like Ignite Show Designer, Show Builder probably will work just fine for you. Or they can be a great stepping stone to get into Finale 3D, right?
Absolutely. I know most of the professionals use Finale 3D for really shows of any size, small or big, and you can pretty much spit out all your cue labels, everything that you need to hook it up to your firing system, get your fireworks out there. It'll tell you everything and exactly how you've scripted your show. So really, really incredibly useful tool on the pricier side. But like you said, you can work up to that if you think that it's going to be right for you and how you're doing shows. There are a few other choreography aids that Spirit of 76 provides. 76proline.com is a great resource. Go in there and look at all the details about each item. We'll always have a performance video up there, or at least the most recent performance video. And if there's not one, we are working on it as well. It's one of my big tasks here at 76. I like to keep the most current, accurate, in-house, stateside performance videos up there. If it's a China side or supplier side video, I usually try to mark it as such in the title or some way so that you know what to expect. Inventory is real time, so going in there, you can filter by all kinds of things, your effects, your colors, your brands, so you can find exactly what you need depending on the caliber you're looking for, different single shots and effects and firing patterns. There's all kinds of things that you can filter through. And then we've also got, back when, from Dan's days of being Proline manager, he put together this really awesome file folder of like show summaries, right? Of like all the recent shows, probably dating back from like 2015 or earlier,
Yeah.
just kind of showcasing, like show files, summaries, products used, finale simulations in there if it's applicable, just all kinds of details about the shows. And so if you ever see something on our YouTube or what Astro has done, some of those things are in there. I know that I just put in the Mizzou and the PGI 2024 show files in there. So those are accessible, but there's a lot of good information in there.
Yeah, I think if particularly the newer shows which were designed on Finale 3D, if you're a little bit overwhelmed and you're not sure what a finished show should look like, you can download those files and basically see what someone else has done in Finale and just give you a reference point. And so that's kind of the idea with those sharing those files from the displays. Or if you just want to know what fireworks were used in a show that you saw online, you can pull up the files and look at that too.
Kind of a good way to kind of look over your shoulder and see what you were doing at the time and how you accomplished that show.
Sam, I think you mentioned it a little bit, but one of the things that I think 76 does better than anybody is putting out fresh new videos and also stateside videos. And I know that's a big part of what you're working on. For show design, it's so valuable to be able to go to the 76 YouTube page or just their website and look up and see, actual stateside current production videos of fireworks. That helps you quite a lot to get durations on cakes or just get a realistic view of like what are these fireworks going to do in my show.
Yeah, you'd be surprised at how much things can differ, especially year to year. If, a product is like, it's been around for a long time, people really are familiar with it, and then it changes factories overseas where it's being produced. And then we usually try to shoot a new video for it because the timing may have adjusted, some of the fuse in there, or even like the colors may have changed. So we really try to keep up to date on those. So what you see on the website is going to be the most recent video, the most recent production quality that I'm aware of, at the very least, is always going to be up there. So that's definitely a resource you should utilize. Which leads us into talking about product. Obviously, product is a big thing when you're considering your Pyromusical. You really need to understand the product categories available and individual products and effects that you can use to, make your show more effective and really wow your audience for whatever purpose you are doing. So there's several categories that we're gonna just kind of briefly talk about. Under the consumer one, there's cakes, Roman candles, reloadable shells, and then you've got the pro use side, which is preloaded single shots, and then single shots of comets and mines. Those pro use cakes, which are the larger 1,000-gram cakes, or something with like a salute or hammer in it, and then slices and sweeps, ground effects, and some other special stuff in there. So all right, so when we're talking about one for consumer, I definitely really like to lean on the 7/6 Show series. If you're familiar with 7/6 Pro line, 7/6 Show series lore, this is kind of like the baby brother to 7/6 Pro line, because we used to have consumer fireworks under that Pro line, and now we've branched it off into 7/6 Show series, so there's no confusion with the laws or regulations around it. This stuff, it is 100% consumer legal. What I love about them is they are dedicated effects that have that professional look in the sky, because you've got the same type of shots going over and over. So starting off with the cakes, we have one of our famous, like the 9-shot Nishiki Kimura that everyone loves. This is in the 7/6 Show series now. So consumer cakes are this great option to kind of fill up your background, fill up this black sky during maybe medium tempos, really any tempos. You definitely check on the duration and the performance of each one for your application. But what we love about them is they're a time saver. If a cake has 9 shots, that's one thing that you have to rig up versus 9. So you've got those same effect shots. They're pre-paced. You will need to break them up if you're wanting to change the pacing of them, but that's just something that you're going to consider whenever you're looking at your music and the story you're trying to tell.
One of the things I like about these show series cakes as opposed to using a normal consumer cake is that an average consumer cake has lots of different effects and then usually a big finale right at the end, because they're trying to make an entire fireworks show in one cake. But these show series cakes, it's all dedicated to the same effect, like Sam mentioned, and there's no finale at the end. You can use that as one part of your show, and then you use several of them to make up the whole show and save the finale for the end, rather than trying to fit a whole fireworks show worth of effects in one item.
Right. Great point. There are a lot of kitchen sink fireworks out there in the consumer lines, and that is not what show series is about. You get consistency throughout. And as a general rule of thumb, the lower the shot count means the larger the shell caliber. So 500 grams are going to range all the way up to like 2.5-inch shots. That's usually your 9 shots, your NOABs, like the 9-shot Nishiki Kimura. And then if you go with a higher shot count, especially like a zipper cake, those are going to range around like the 15 millimeter to 25 millimeter, depending on how many shots those are, like 100 to 50 shots or something. We've also got some Roman candles. I really like Roman candles to give you that nice low level effect, but you get a barrage of shots in these. They're usually not breaking, although we do have one that has like a little chrysanthemum in there, a little bit of a report, but these are great to just kind of like add that lower level. And I like to call them like a layer of controlled chaos, because they're not super precise on how quickly they shoot. Usually they'll be pretty consistent on whenever they pick up their pace, but at first they might shoot a few, and then they pick up the pace, and then it becomes a barrage. So it's not super specific on the pacing. In a case, the pacing will be consistent. You will probably need multiples to kind of achieve like this fan look that you see in this little video here. But I really like that because you can layer your effects. You can put these a little bit closer to your audience and kind of give it that layered perspective. You've used Roman candles quite a bit in your shows too, Dan, right?
Yep, best way to shoot Roman candles is a lot of them at the same time.
Yeah. And then you've got your reloadable canister shells, artillery shells. These are 60 gram, usually 1.75-inch in diameter. The breaks are super loud. They're going to be larger than you see in a lot of those cakes, the 500 gram or 200 gram cakes, especially if there's like a lot of shots in them, usually these shells are going to be bigger, bigger breaks. They're pretty inexpensive too. I like that you can kind of fill your sky with like a bunch of different high level effects. You can mix and match them, you can fuse them together and save a little bit in your e-firing cues. They do require racks, more tubes, something that is braced so that it won't knock over. They're not necessarily the most symmetrical. Sometimes you can get them a little bit more symmetrical than others. And they're kind of tough to be precise on the timing, unless you use the E matches, which that does eat up a lot of cues. But if you're going for very precise timing in your show, then that might be the way to go. We really like our supernova cans. All right. Pro use items. All right. Dan, tell me a little bit about preloaded single shot shells.
So a preloaded single shot shell is typically going to be 50 or 60 millimeter, although it could come in a 30 or 40 also. The idea with these is that you have a tube and a shell all together, and you can have a port in the bottom, which means you can directly install an electric match or a firewire initiator into the bottom of it and have a very precise one shot, one shell. It's kind of like taking the one shot comet and mine category and applying it to shells. And the biggest you can get is the 60 millimeter, which is kind of similar to like the NOABs, like the 9-shot racks. Back in the day, a long time ago, a lot of the hobbyist enthusiast community used to break those tubes up and use them as single shots. And so this is a way of having that item already built and ready to go for professional use in that way. I like using these a lot. It's the typically like the 60 millimeters, the biggest breaks you can get in 1/4 category. If you want the biggest and the best breaks and you want very precise timing, this is probably the product for you. One thing you do have to think about is how to secure them, right? So it's an item that is not inherently stable, which means you typically need to either build a rack to put it in, or if you had like, say, a 3-inch mortar rack or 4-inch mortar rack from the 1/3 world, you could, nest them inside of those tubes. But if you're going to use this product, you do need to think about how to stabilize it for sure.
Yeah. Is that something that you would consider putting on a Pyrolama rack, or do you think it's too
Probably not the 50 and 60 millimeter size, just because that caliber is a little bit large to put on a Pyrolama rack, particularly for the X holders. It's just a very large device to put on an X holder. Yeah, I'd probably stay away from putting them on a Pyrolama rack. But if you had a smaller caliber one, like a 30 or 40 millimeter, you probably could get away with that. Comets and mines. This is a lot of show designers' favorite item, right? Because you have the most precision with a single shot item, and so a lot of very tightly choreographed pyromusicals, high cue count pyromusicals would typically take advantage of a lot of these single shot comets and mines, and it's one of my favorite effects. I just try to use them sparingly in fireworks shows as much as I can, because they do take a lot of time and effort to set up, right? And so typically for me, when I'm using them for special points in the music or special times. I also like to use them at the beginning and end of a show or a segment of a show, because that gives me more control over ending. So like if I have a song, I might put some cakes in, and then as it gets to the end, towards the end of the song, I might start using more single shot comets and mines and things like that, because I want to be very precise about the ending, and I want, when the song ends, I want the fireworks to end. So comets and mines are a great tool in the toolkit for that kind of moment.
Yeah, absolutely. They do take some hardware, right? And like you said, they're quite time consuming to set up, like this little scene here.
Single shots all have to be precisely set up. You got to get them precisely angled, exactly where you want
Mm-hmm.
them to make that scene. Some tools I think that make it a lot easier and faster. The Pyrolama racks obviously are great for single shots. I use them a lot in a lot of shows. Obviously, you have those. The new thing now is the eye shots. There's a photo of some of the eye shots. The eye shots make single shots so much faster. You can just snap them together very quickly, and it eliminates a lot of the time that it takes to set up single shots. That's kind of a new thing right now that I know 76 is starting to carry a little bit more.
Yeah. we're gonna have to do a whole show just on iShot because there's a lot of things to note about that and questions, but it is
Yes,
game
maybe an
changing.
entire, we could do a whole podcast on it. Yeah.
Yeah, we sure could. A lot of the display companies are considering that solution for sure. For hobbyists, it definitely would still save you some time. It's definitely an investment. I also really like the Pyrolama racks. They work really well. They're super sturdy, and you get all these different kind of angles. Plus, they've got so many different accessories that you can
Ah,
adjust
yeah.
the angles. You don't even have to do an arc with it. You could have it all flat and then use the angle
Yeah.
adapters. So customizable.
It's a very versatile system for sure.
Moving along with the pro use, we did introduce pro use cakes over the past year or two. We do have a line of 1,000 gram cakes, so over the 500 gram limit, and or there's even some 200 grams that are considered pro use because they have a pro use effect, such as like our hammer, which is basically like a sort of salute. So as you can see, this is kind of like one of those, higher,
Hmm.
punchier, a lot of flash powder in there, and that's a good pro use cake right there. Again, just with any cake, that's a potential time saver. A lot of shots that you don't have to rig up individually. You'll definitely want to consider your calibers on them. Dan, have
Yeah.
you used
The
these in very many shows?
yeah, we've been using a lot of these actually. The thing I like about these new cakes is that they have typically the quick match leader and the e-match port right on top of the cake. And so if I'm setting up a show and I use these cakes, it's very fast to set them up and to match them and put them out, as opposed to having a like a consumer cake or something like that, where if you want to fire it electronically, you got to modify it, insert a e-match, poke it, or something like that. Takes a lot more time and effort. Whereas these, there's a port right on top. They're built from the ground up to be fired electronically. They're designed that way from the start, and that makes them faster and easier for professionals to set up and shoot.
And that reminds me, the show series now do have a port as well, although it's a little hidden. There are some ports that you can find on the show series, consumer cakes that are just under the logo, but you got to know what you're looking for to be able to find it. Um,
Oh, great.
but these are obviously for pro use and a lot more convenient with those ports up there. And you got slices and sweeps.
Yeah, the slices and sweeps is another great effect. It's sort of like a series. It's like one row of a cake, right? Instead of shooting a cake and like the timing gets off or varied a little bit, you can shoot slices and sweeps and have a little bit more control. It's like a series of single shots set up to do some sort of pattern, whether it's all together at once or sweeping left to right, right to left, things like that. I like to think of the slices and sweeps as kind of an in between, somewhere between a cake and a single shot. Gives you more control, but you get one E match that'll fire several tubes or several shots. So, like, from a cost perspective, right, if you're like limited on cues, you want to shoot a 7 point fan, yeah, you could use seven single shots, but then you got to use seven E matches. You have to spend the time to either series wire them or you have to have, seven cues of your firing system taken up. Well, why not just use a 7 point fan slice? And it's one E match, you plug it in, all the shots go at the same time. And it's just a kind of a faster, cost effective method of still getting some very precise control out of your fireworks. Yeah, no, this is a great product category. I like using these quite a lot. We use them in a lot of shows. You still do have to think about how you're going to secure them, right? Like it's not like a cake where a cake is inherently generally pretty stable. You might still need to stake it up or something, but a slice is just like a thin slab, right? So you need to either construct some sort of holder or figure out some way of keeping them up, whether it's rebar, duct tape, aluminum holders like Craigco sells, or even just building some wooden boxes to put them in, right? So they can't fall over. You'll have to think about how you want to secure them for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to a 200 gram cake or something with a smaller footprint on the base where you just need to set it up against something. This is one of your fancy racks. I'm not sure where you got that, but like I've seen you guys use the wooden racks, wooden like basically little boxes that you just set them in, that works perfectly.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it.
And there's a whole lot of variety in these slices and sweeps from 76. I love the effects that we have in those. Like this is a ghost sweep here. That's one of the, in my opinion, the coolest effects. You've also got the super sweep and fan sweep are obviously they sweep, and then the slices, of course, all shots go up at once to make your fan look. They are really punchy. They really wow the crowd. I think everyone loves those when those moments happen. If you can find the right moment to put them in, do it. They're so awesome.
For sure. It's a good accent piece.
And then we got ground effects. Yeah, there's so many effects. So many effects to choose from.
Flames, chirps, strobes, oh my.
I know. This is one of those lower level, closer to the audience kind of things that you can add that extra layer to your show. Each of these is completely different. You know, the flames could be used to build up momentum. The gerbs, depending on the duration, can also build up momentum or also just be like a very powerful hit at a certain time because you can have instant gerbs. You can have like ones that go up to 30 seconds and just stay there basically like a fancy fountain. The strobes are really awesome too. I stole this instance from a Sky Wars show, 2023, where it was like a scene where like the cops were coming, and I was like, oh, that's really awesome, really unique use of strobes right there. In general, they break up the monotony. You can place them closer to the audience. You will need to secure them. Usually, I see a lot of people just gluing them to boards. It tends to be like the most economic way to do it. Some of them fit really nicely into those Pyrolama holders. Dan, what you got on ground effects?
It's really just another tool in the toolkit when you're trying to put your show together and you're trying to do this pyromusical. If you have all aerial stuff, having some of these ground effects gives you either if you're trying to do layering, it gives you something low level, or I think they can stand out on their own if you put them up close and you have the right time in the music and you just want to illuminate the ground with some flames or strobes or something like that. They can stand on their own or they can accent other things, but it gives you just another tool in the toolkit to put together a good show.
For sure. Yeah, and they're no small thing either. They look small, but like they really do they can make a big impact in your show if you use them in a clever way. And then if you really want to get fancy, we got ladder rack.
So this is a ultra specialized type of thing. The concept is basically if you take a bunch of mines and kind of narrow them so that they're shooting almost like a pinpoint accuracy in these very precise patterns, the idea is that you can create letters in the sky. And this is something that 76 sells. It's a very specialized rack. It's a very specialized product. And then there's also a tube which helps narrow the shots. It's like a 4 foot long stainless steel tube. Think of it like if you're shooting a mine out of a short barrel, like a sawed off shotgun, the spray goes very wide versus a long barrel. The spray is very well confined. Sort of an ultra specialized, I would say, type of thing for like very special moment, but it gives you the ability to spell things in the sky, which can be very impactful. Like I think Sam's got the picture there of the Mizzou show, so we did an M and a U for MU, but you can also do other things like hearts, or someone has like a very special moment, like a 70th birthday or whatever it is. You can put numbers in the sky, anniversaries, 50th anniversary, things like that. It's kind of a quite specialized and unique thing that you won't see it very often. So when you do see it, it's pretty special, I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely a crowd pleaser. But man, those racks are heavy.
They're heavy and they're a lot of work to set up,
Yes, they
but it's
are.
but it's cool when you do it and you pull it off and people see it. I mean, it's only going to
Right.
last 5 seconds, but the people who know, they'll know it was cool.
That's right. Yeah, you really don't get this effect with hardly anything else in fireworks. Very precise lettering or symboling. You can definitely do it with single shots like comets that go up in a certain way, but then then it kind of rises at the same time, so it's a different effect. Whereas this, it stays in the air for like you said about 5 seconds, has that second layer of effect where it kind of crackles, so you see it again. So it's really special. It is not the easiest thing to set up or move around these racks, but man, it is really cool when you see it in person.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that was a lot of products. So with anything, we definitely encourage like always double and triple check durations, because when you're doing a pyromusical or really anything automatically firing, you want your show to be as precise as possible. Check the product page for those most current videos. And check with us. We can always go out and test something that we have in stock to see if there's any discrepancies. But test on your own as well. Get if you've got multiple in a case, please test before you shoot your show, just to make sure that you know exactly what you're expecting. Sometimes cakes can vary with how they're fused up. To alleviate some of that potential discrepancy, you can always bookend things with single shots and slices that are going to go up immediately. You know exactly how much time that they take.
The best way to start an indie show.
Agreed. They also just look badass. Well, that pretty much covers what we were covering today. Basic show choreography, and then after that, you put it all together. The best pyromusical designers, we're looking at one right here, Dan Haines, they consider how their music and their effects are going to make their audience feel. Every moment of the show, you're going to be considering the story that you're telling, what emotions you want them to be feeling, and budget. Time constraints are big considerations, so work with what you've got. But sometimes less is more. You don't need a giant 75 position, like $100,000 show to make a big impact. A backyard show can be, it could be 3 positions even, or 2 positions, and still amaze your audience if you use your product effectively. What are your final thoughts on basic show choreography, Dan?
I think my final thought is just remember to have fun, and it's an artistic endeavor. So if everybody doesn't get it, that's kind of their problem. You can't judge good art, right? I mean, you can't put a price on it. And so as long as you're having fun with it, I think you're doing a good job.
That's right. It's all subjective. It really is an art form. We are painting the sky and bringing your vision to life in the air. So your show is your show. Experiment, have fun with it, try some new things, do some things that you've seen and been inspired by and really want to see for yourself in your own show. It's all good. And we want to see your shows too. So share it with us. We'd love to see that stuff. And to round out our show, if there's any other topics that you would like us to cover, please let us know in the comments wherever this is posted, wherever you're listening to this or watching this. Let us know. We want to educate as much as possible on all the world of pyro. So with that, thank you, Dan, with Astro Magic Effects. Go check out his stuff. Doing amazing stuff always. All right. Thank you guys for listening. This is BoomCast. Stay green.